Okay, so you can see in this file that I'll be working on, I've added lots of elements from the library, such as these furniture pieces and the lights. And if you've seen in the earlier videos how I loaded those in, I used the component tool and then load family. And so by default, Revit will take you to the metric library, which comes with the program when you install it. And you can browse through any of those folders and choose these Revit family files, which are RFA files. And if you've noticed when you save the files you've been working in, they're project files, which are RVT files. And so Revit uses those two different file formats for projects, obviously using RVT files, and then families can be stored separately in RFA files. And so we've been looking earlier at using model in place to create custom elements that you need to make. So I'll just remind you about this. And that's also a family, but it's a family within a project file. And so they're good for one-off unique elements. And I'll just remind you about these tools that you have: extrusion, blend, revolve, and so on, to create solid objects that you need for your designs. And I'll cancel that. That's a useful tool, like I said, for custom objects, but where you have repeated elements, such as this piece of furniture, I'll just copy this over to the right. The normal process is to make those in a separate file. And the reason is that you can manage them much more easily if they're stored in their own file. So if we need to change this chair, if it's been made using model in place, we'd have to go and select each one and edit them separately. But if you make a separate family file, you can select the family, and then you'll get the option to edit family. So I'm just going to choose that now, and you'll see it'll take me to the file that that object is stored in. And it's actually a much easier way of managing groups of objects. And often in any design project, you'll have repeated elements, whether it's furniture or lights or doors, windows, any of those elements that are going to be used more than once in your designs. And so if I make a change here, the legs, for example, just to make a simple change, I might want them to be a different shape. So I can edit that revolve, and I'll just go into a different view. And I'll change the scale there to make it a bit easier to see the line work. And so I'll just make some simple changes to the base there. I'm just going to draw a new line and join those together again. So if you remember making a revolve, it's based on a profile, and that's the lines that are in pink there, and then an axis around which those profile lines are revolved. And so I'll just widen the leg by moving that line in the profile to the right, tick to finish, and then in the 3D view you can see it's changed the one that I selected, but then I need to just duplicate that. So I'm just going to go to wireframe. So I'm going to delete the other legs and replace all of those with my new one. Okay, so I'm just using mirror there, and okay, so my 3D view, you can see it's got my new legs, and then I'm going to use load into project, select the file I want, and then choose this option, override existing version. Okay, so then you'll see the legs in all of my chairs have changed. And so here you can see on this chair they've changed, and also this other one. Okay, so you need to remember that whenever you need to have repeated objects, it's really important that you don't use model in place. Only use model in place where you have unique elements that are really one-offs. And actually the example that comes up on the little video player there, where you've got that table that's fitting around that column, is a really good example of a one-off piece of furniture that would be made just to fit that column. Whereas in most cases, furniture pieces would be repeated, and they'd need to be identical in each case, and therefore you'd make a separate family file, or simply edit one that's already there. So I'm going to show you in a moment how to make a new file from scratch. But often the most common way you'll make your own families is by starting with one that's pre-existing. So you can either use that method I just showed you, select any family that's been loaded and click on Edit Family to go to that family file. So notice it's taken me to the same file that I was just working in because there are two variations on this chair. I'll go back into it and you'll see. Okay, so these two different sizes of that bench both come from the same family file. So you can see there the legs are updated in this smaller version. So you can have multiple sizes in the different families that you work with, and you can change other properties as well. So I'll give you maybe another example of that. A door and a window, or doors and windows are common objects that you work with in this way. So if I select that door, you can see in the list that comes up in properties, it has multiple sizes. So all of those sizes are stored in that one family file. So we don't need to make a different family for each different size of door. And again, if I choose Edit Family, and then I'll go into the exterior elevation, and you can see then the height and the, well, there's some other properties that come up there. The width property must be there, but in the floor plan, there it is. And so those are variable properties, and that's a really important concept with all families, that you can have properties that are adjustable. And so again here, if I have, go back into the 3D view, so if I've got elements that I simply want to remove from this family, I can do that just by deleting them. So I don't want to have architraves in this family, so I'm going to delete those architraves. And then again, loading the project, select the project file that I want, override existing version, and it's going to remove the architraves from that door. So that's actually a really important concept with doors in particular, because most of the doors in the library are set up based on American construction practices, and you'll need to modify those because doors and windows are actually made quite differently in other regions due to the history of the way things are built in different areas. So in America they had a lot of Scandinavian influence in the especially timber work, and in Australia and a lot of Commonwealth countries the joinery and the other timber work's done a bit differently. So you often don't have architraves constructed in the same way, and the door jamb is often more prominent. So in this case again, there's no door jamb showing. Going back to use Edit Family, I could then go and model that in. That's a bit more involved, so I won't demonstrate that to you, but you could have a go at making a solid to add that if you need to show it in your 3D views. Alright, so going into a window family, this is really important. If I go to Window, you'll see that you only have one basic window type loaded, which is your fixed window. If I choose Load Family and then go to the Windows folder, you'll see then that you've got a few basic window types, and luckily a lot of them are set up for Australia. So you have the ones with Oz in brackets, and they have some with glazing bars as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I'm just going to choose one of the sash windows, which we should have here, double hung. And you'll see they come up with preloaded sizes or predefined sizes. So there you can choose as many or as little as you like. So I can choose a few using control. So in the list there you can see these different sizes have come up. Just going to choose the last one there and place one of those windows into a wall. And then if I select it, it's maybe not quite the size I want that to be a bit narrower. So I'm going to use edit type to change the adjustable properties. You'll see some actually come up in properties when you select an object. You'll see things like the sill height. So I'll make that maybe 100 mil. That's a nice round number. And then scrolling down, you can see the head height. I could also adjust, which is just another way of setting the height, whether you measure from the top or the bottom. And then if I go to edit type, you'll see other properties come up there. Alright, so I want to adjust the width. So I'm going to use duplicate. And the way these names are done, it's got the width and the height given as just using two numbers there. So I'm just going to type in the overall size because it's just a lot simpler. So I'm going to make it 450 by 2410. And then I'm going to change the width there to 450. You can see the height's already 2410. Clicking OK, and you can see then that the window's obviously taken on that new width. And then I want to take out the glazing bars as well. So for that I need to use Edit Family and then select those things that I want to remove. So that's done. Now I can use Load into Project. OK. And again, override existing version. You don't need to use the bottom option, just usually the first one. So let's remove the glazing bars. And I can see then again it's got this reveal, which I may not want, so again I'll use Edit Family to show you again. So that's this section that's showing up in Timber, so I'll delete that as well. And again, Load into Project. Okay, so you can hopefully see then that even though these families are stored in separate files, it's quite easy to switch from the project to the family file. And again, it's a really important process when you work with Revit to be able to manage those separate files. So I'm just going to give you a simple example of a family that you can make, starting with a new file. On the main menu, once you go to New and then Family, it'll give you a list of all the main categories in Revit. And I'm going to use metric casework. So casework's what you should use for built-in furniture. And so again, it's taken me to a separate family file. And now I can make, in my front view, a solid, just like you did when you use model in place. So with an extrusion, I'm simply going to make a rectangle. And I'm going to use a line this time and lock each of these sides. So make sure you have a go at this because it's the basis of most families in Revit. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a dimension using just the dimension tool that you have on the Modify panel. And then I'm going to select the upper line there and set that to 40 mil. Tick to finish. And so that's made a simple shelf, which in 3D, so use a very basic object. In plan, I'm then going to select the box or the shelf that I've just modelled and stretch these sides so that again I get the lock symbol. And now that's an adjustable shelf. So in the edit type or family types tool that you have on the modify tab, or it's actually on every tab in a family file, you can adjust those properties. And I'm going to just change the depth there to 300. And I'll leave the width as is. Okay, so I'm going to save this so you can access it, and make sure you have a look at it and also try and go over these steps. Now, it's a little bit to take in, but it really is the way you do most of the design work for interiors projects in Revit. So going into, I'll just put this in Museum Project Resources and I'll call it Adjustable Shelf. Okay, so again using load into project, just going to make sure my current project file is selected, clicking OK. Now I can place this shelf on any wall. Just going to place some over here. Spacebar, if you don't know, will let you rotate families on the fly as you insert them. Just going to put a couple against that wall there. And now I'll show you in a 3D view. Okay, so very simple objects, but if I select either of those now, you'll see when I go to edit type that all of the properties are adjustable. So I can change the width there. Instead of going and modelling a new solid, I can just type in a new value for the width. And that shelf's going to change. And you can see there both of them have changed because they're coming from the one family file. And so again, I'll just illustrate that one more time. I can change the width to another value, and then I'll change the height maybe as well to something different. Okay, so really important concept. Just think about what you're trying to achieve with your design projects. For interiors, you're often designing the built-in furniture and the other furnishings in your spaces, and they're made up largely of items that are repeated. So you don't want to be going and modelling each of those over and over again when they're really identical things. And the purpose of these programs really is to manage groups of objects. So I'll just give one last example with that that family. You can see it's just got a fairly basic material, so I'm going to select it, edit family, select the solid, and then I'm going to click on the button next to the material slot. You'll see there's a blank button which will let you add a parameter for the material. So I'm just going to choose add parameter there, and I call this shelf material. Okay, I'm going to save that file, again load into project, and again override existing version. Now I can select that family, choose edit type, and you'll see then I've got a new property that's available, shelf material, and I can set that to say a timber or any other material. Okay, so that's a common issue people have with families. even ones they've made themselves, not being able to set materials. So again, you do that using parameters, as I've just shown you. So make sure you have an idea about that, and we'll go further into families later, but just try and have a go at least making one family based on something you're designing in the space.